So we are finishing up reading the book of Leviticus. It's a great book. It's so much stuff in there, and I think people don't study Leviticus enough. I think it's just there's a lot of good stuff in it, but I realize that it is boring for people. Now, this particular section, not it's actually more exciting because there's some laws that people can make sense of. I want to start with a question. Have you ever guys seen this game of three cups, where people set them up and they move them around, and there's a ball somewhere in there, and they just keep shuffling them around? Maybe you even played a game like that. It's very popular in the streets that you would see like people just set it up on a cardboard and do little solo cups or something like that. I don't know if you realize or not, most of it is just, a scam.
Right.
Because there is no ball. The ball is in the hand and it gets released whenever it is that you have guessed the wrong cup. That's when it's like, oh, there it is. I guess they call it a shell game or something like that, right? So there's a reason why I bring this up. I did see it actually the other day. I was walking the street and I saw people playing. I'm like, I can't believe people still go for this. But they did. So sometimes we think we can follow the ball, but in reality, it's all in our imagination because it's in the sleight of hand. Now, Jeremiah 16. You'll get while I'm bringing this up. Jeremiah 16 is a chapter that we read in Haftarah. And the prophet speaks to Israel, addresses Israel, and sometimes in a less direct way, he addresses the nations as well. There are a few words there, I believe, spoken to the nations. And many people do not realize this. But the nations, they actually need Israel. They need Israel to be a conduit of sorts. A lot of times, an example, something that will actually help them along the way. In the way, I could say that the whole world needs lessons that Israel has learned. And just by simply watching Israel, they can learn those lessons. Mm-hmm. And besides that, I'm going to say this, that the nations actually cannot escape Israel. And in Jeremiah 16, the prophet hints to us that one of the reasons that God scattered Israel is so that the nations would see something they have never seen before. Mm-hmm. So yes, even being punished themselves, Israelites, his people, are an object lesson to the whole world. Now, I find that ironic. Now, I want you to look with me this morning at a set of verses, particularly that jumped out at me as I was reading this week and meditating upon the words of the prophet. Jeremiah 16 verse 19 just jumped out at me, and I prayed and I said, well, what is in here? Well, what I saw was profound wisdom. Jeremiah 16:19 says, Elecha goyim ya'ovu me'apsei aretz. To you, to God, the nations will come from the ends of the earth. Vayomeru, and they will say to God, presumably, or maybe they'll just exclaim out loud at some point. This is what they will say. Ach sheker, nachalu avotenu. Our fathers have inherited falsehood, deception. Chevel, v'im ba'am moim. Nothing but empty air. Nothing of benefit. This is what the prophet says the nations will suddenly, at one point, realize and say. These are very striking, very emphatic words. Words of regret. Their inheritance, it says, sheker, which literally means lies, deception, falsehood, fraud. Imagine realizing that what you have is that. And then the other word that the prophet uses is chevel. Chevel means, typically gets translated in English Bibles as vanity. But it really means something like breath. It's like just empty air. That's all it is. Now why would the nations all of a sudden say this? And the answer is in the realization that, to help us make sense of this, is found is right there at the very, very end of verse 19 in Jeremiah 16. They reasoned this: can people make gods not being gods themselves? Now that's my translation. I know whatever you're reading, whatever version you're reading, it may say something different, but it should be pretty close to that. Can people make gods not being gods themselves? They realized all of a sudden that the wisdom and substance around which they organized their entire society was a deception, because they themselves came up with it. There is no divine substance in something that originates entirely from human origin. And to believe otherwise is to delude ourselves. Only divine can give us something divine. When people make things up, people just make things up. What led the nations to such a radical and shattering conclusion? This is a very simple answer. Israel. Seeing what stands at the center of Israel's world is what made them realize that what they have is empty air. Israel is not always the greatest example. Maybe Israel is wavered. Maybe Israel is disobedient, obstinate, even dispersed among the nations as a punishment, but at least they know the difference between real God and empty things that the people dream up and make themselves actually believe, convince themselves that they have something that they themselves have dreamed up. Now, I'm saying these things because this is a radical realization. I wish these words are true. I wish the nations look upon Israel and see and realize that their heritage is built on things that do not originate from God, and that what Israel has truly does originate from Hashem, from the Almighty, which is what makes us unique, special, different, and remarkable. What makes anything remarkable about us is that we carry the truth that is from God. We don't have merits of our own. We're simply inherited something wonderful, and we keep holding on to it. So if you're appreciating the depth of these words, if you're grasping how profound they are, then perhaps you're ready to hear my suggestion on how we can live today our lives reflecting this very truth. I have some very concrete things that I wanted to suggest. My first point, first principle that I want you to embrace is trust God's Torah to show the best way. Trust God's Torah to show you the best way. We are reading concluding chapters of Vayikra, and as we read them this week, I know you're meditating upon all these agricultural practices, upon all these economic models that we're reading about. You studied this before. Shemitah, absolutely fantastic thing. Sabbatical cycle, letting the land rest. I mean, it makes total sense. Yovel, Jubilee laws. What if these laws have actually been lived? All these laws have never truly been lived out the way that God meant for them to be. We have to realize that even in the best of times, Israel has struggled to live according to such divine economy. God gave us the Torah. He gave us the pattern. He gave us the system. He says, just follow these rules, follow these cues, live according to this pattern that I'm giving you. And in the best of days, we kind of sort of did it. And whatever measure that we have been able to do that in these principles were applied, they brought blessing, they brought prosperity. They brought transforming people's lives, really, in sometimes way that we can't even fully understand how it happens. Why? Because this wisdom is from on high. We didn't come up with that economic system. That's why it works in a miraculous way. It brings fairness. It brings dignity. It has this heritage of continuity that it carries within us. It gives us grace and it brings restoration. It's built into these laws. The idea that somebody can lose everything and then 50 years later gain it all back and that family restored back. This is so unlike all economic structures that we are familiar with in this world, where we just basically lose everything and it's gone. They are better. These laws are better. If we just trust them, if we just live by them, they will bring us real benefit, real substance. Now, that's an example of me explaining to you when I say trusting God's Torah, that this is the best way for us. If we actually live this way and we embrace this economic system, it will bring about substantive change, a difference in our lives. It will transform our society if we actually did this way. And then, on the other hand, is the economic systems we came up with, our wisdom, our sechel, that, well, sometimes can amount to nothingness, to empty air. So, as we look at God's laws, even though they seem sometimes counterintuitive to us, we read commandments in the Torah and we say, this just does not seem like it will benefit me in any way, but it's always true. Why? Because they originate from Hashem. We didn't make them up. This is not our wisdom. This is God's Torah. So I say trust God's Torah, because it will always show you the best way. If you want to have a life of substance, that is the direction to move. My second point is tied to this one. Let your faith be observed by others. Amazing. Allow your faith to be observed by others. It would be good if your faith is observed by others. But that means, of course, you have to live how you believe. And if you are not very good at it, which is okay, even if you mess up, we all do, you just never give up and still follow the teachings of Hashem that He gave you. If you continue struggling and persevering and doing it however you can, it will still result in something better than nothing. Others will follow the things that they made up themselves, and they will see that it will bring no benefit to them, and they will say, how come my life is not any good? Well, because I built it on a pattern that I myself invented. That is where the nations in Jeremiah realized that the heritage they have, the heritage that their fathers passed on to them, is hevel. It's empty air. Others will notice your works. They will notice the benefits simply because, not because you're so good at it, but simply because they come from God and you just obeyed Him. It's not your wisdom, it's not your creativity, it's not your talent, it's not your imagination, but the design of the all-powerful maker of heaven and earth, the creator of all that is. Can we lean on that? All day long. That is why it is crucial to live one's faith, even imperfectly, and to hold on to God's truth, no matter what. That is the mission of Israel among the nations, always has been. And that is why when the nations see Israel, even in their state of being dispersed and scattered, they realize and learn the lessons. They see the direction that they should go. Our Rabbi Yeshua taught us, let your faith be seen by all men, so that they will glorify the Father. Remember that teaching He left us? There's a reason why He said that. These words just resound the Torah. They resound the prophet. That is the calling of Israel. And everyone who follows one God in this world is to do whatever we can in all we do we organize